This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Institute. Learn more at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Institute. Build his future.
Joining us now is Congressman C. Bobby Scott. He's from the 3rd District of Virginia, a Democrat, and that stretches from Newport News, Hampton, all the way to Richmond. Congressman Scott, always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, John. Don't leave out Norfolk and Portsmouth.
Well, yes, stretching from Norfolk, Portsmouth, Hampton, Newport News, all the way to Richmond. You got a long district. It's like an oblong box.
Well, it's easier to get around than some of the others. You've got Eastern Shore, which is about 2 hours long itself. I can get from one end to the other in about an hour and a half.
And
so
now,
it's not that bad.
And now that we've got a real transportation solution in Virginia, see, that drive time is going to get cut down when we finally fix this traffic problem in the state after almost 4 decades.
Congressman,
okay, Congressman, let's get right to it. Do you believe that the Zimmerman verdict is a civil rights issue that now merits federal intervention?
The case, yes. The case, as it was brought by the prosecution, turned out to be a case that was almost impossible to win. Most of the people just look at the overall situation. A young boy goes to the store, walking home, minding his own business, ends up profiled by, and if you listen to the tape, there's no question he's racially profiled by somebody that ended up shooting and killing him. Now, what happened in between, that's for what the jury decided. But the case that was brought was one where you're almost entitled to a not guilty verdict if you can claim that you were fearful of your life at the moment you shot. Doesn't how you got there, what happened before, doesn't matter. I mean, the fact that he tracked the guy down and got into an altercation, that should have been a crime right there. You don't get absolved by a crime even if Trayvon Martin turned on him and committed a crime. They could both be committing crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the prosecution brought the case and the lackluster prosecution, where half the prosecution witnesses ended up testifying more on behalf of the defendant than the prosecution, I think just left a lot to be desired. It was televised so that a lot of people could see how lackluster the prosecution was. I mean, you had a situation where the last witness on the defense went virtually unchallenged. The lady says that 2 black boys broke into her house. Well, excuse me, what is the relevant? Trayvon didn't break into their house. What is the relevance of that other than to try to justify the racial profiling without talking about it?
Okay, but what about the fact that the prosecutor, this was a special prosecutor appointed by the governor, so it's not like, well, okay, they were in Sanford and the people that were in there were not particularly competent. I mean, we've seen that in some small towns. I recall back the.
Well, I'm not questioning their motives.
Right.
I'm just saying that whoever they were presented a theory of a case that really, if the theory of the case and the jury instructions are that he's entitled to a not guilty verdict if he feared for his life at the moment he shot.
So you
can't win that because who knows what was on his mind?
Well, so what you're referring to is Florida's stand your ground law, right?
Well, the self-defense. Are you entitled to a self-defense defense based on self-defense when you have provoked the situation? I mean, he got out of the car, he tracked down the guy, and then they get into an altercation. According to Zimmerman, Trayvon was getting the better of the fight to the point where now he feared for his life, and then he killed him. Can you claim self-defense in a situation you got yourself into?
Well, obviously they were able to do that.
And if you claim self-defense for the gunshot, are you not guilty of some kind of assault getting into that situation? That just focusing on the last minute really was a case that prosecution, I don't see how you can win that. I mean, you can go through, try as hard as you can. If the jury instructions are that if you believe Zimmerman was in fear of his life at the moment he pulled the trigger, then, I mean, all he's got to say is, I was in fear of my life. He got to testify, interestingly enough, talking about the prosecution, by videotape. They played the tape. He wasn't on the stand, subject to cross-examination.
Mm-hmm.
He gets to give his side of the story on videotape. I mean, how'd that get in?
Yeah, but I mean, that's now we're playing a Monday morning armchair second fiddle quarterback. I mean, the fact of the matter is he was exonerated, found not guilty by a jury of his peers that was signed off on by both the prosecution and the defense. So the problem that some people are having with this federal intervention now, Congressman, is like, okay, we had the trial. We saw it on the internet. It was certainly transparent. You might not have agreed with some of the tactics, but he was found to be not guilty of that crime. And so now it's a head scratcher as why are the feds getting involved in this? And so people are saying, well, what would have happened if he was white? Then we wouldn't even be having
the question of if he was white, would Zimmerman have would Zimmerman have followed him?
Maybe he would have. How do we know that?
Well, if you listen to the tape as why he was following him, I mean, it's a racist-laced tape about all kinds of racial innuendo as why he was targeting Trayvon Martin and why he got out of the car fully armed.
Okay, so
and that is a different crime. That's a hate crime. That is not a that's not a murder. That's a hate crime.
Okay, so what you're saying is you want the feds to intervene and...
Well, I want them to complete an investigation to see if they have a prosecutable case.
Now, if they don't,
obviously you can't bring it. There's also, just like the O.J. case, which was also, I guess you call it a head scratcher.
Yes.
But I believe that O.J. was entitled, based on the trial, to an acquittal. You had the Maine police officer plead the fifth on the question, did you plant the evidence? Pleaded the fifth. I mean, how do you proceed with the case?
Mm-hmm.
With that, the prosecutor put on perjured testimony.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a lot to be desired in that case. And what happened subsequently was that the family brought a civil action and got a civil judgment against O.J. and both individuals. I think $25 million apiece. So I suspect that might happen too.
Well, two issues on that. Number one, the family of O.J.'s former wife, now deceased, did not receive a dime because he doesn't have $50 million. And number two, as we understand it, you can't bring one of these civil cases in Florida. Now, here's my final question.
Oh, that's if you have. You get immunity if it was a stand your ground case. You're right.
Right. So they're not going to be able to do
stand your
that.
Ground.
Right. And that seems to be what it is now. Here's my question. If the feds do an investigation, and certainly Attorney General Eric Holder has indicated they will, and the feds find no evidence to go forward, are you then going to be satisfied?
No evidence? Yeah, if he finds
not evidence to go forward.
Even if he finds evidence, but it is, sometimes you can find evidence, but just on the basis of the situation you're in, it's not prosecutable. You do not believe you can get a conviction. He should not bring a case that he does not believe he can win.
And then if that
even if there's a suspicion, even if there's some evidence, you should not bring a case you don't think you can win.
So if he decides he can't win and that's the end of it, are you going to be satisfied?
I don't know. I'll be satisfied. I mean, that's where you are. I'll be satisfied that the process has done its job. I mean, but you still have the situation where you have an innocent boy walking down the street, minding his own business, ends up getting shot.
Mm-hmm. It's a tragedy, no doubt.
And so whether the criminal justice system can respond to it or the civil justice system, you still have the. And if you listen to the tape, why he was targeted, if you're just listening to the tape, and the fact that they put on a witness, that the defense put on a witness at the end, that essentially the only purpose I can see in that is to justify the racial profiling. I think you've got a very unfortunate situation.
It is, and it's certainly a tragedy that this whole thing happened and that this young man is dead. No question with that. ObamaCare delayed till 2015. Boy, this doesn't feel good.
No, the employer mandate has been delayed a year. Everything else is in place.
Right, but the employer mandate, as we know, is a key leg in the stool to make the whole thing
well, no, the individual
feasible.
mandate is a key leg. The employer mandate, it turns out, it only applied to employers employing over 50 people. I think they calculated that about 95% of employers already provide insurance. So only 5% of employers would be employees over 50 would be implicated. I mean, it's just not that many. And so 95% of America won't. Well, probably more than 95% of America. That's just employees. Others get the insurance are not employed by people over 50. So, I mean, you're talking just about. It won't affect very many people at all. The problem we had is they cut the administration money, and so they haven't been able to communicate as effectively with people as they want. And they're most people, when you say under 50 employees, are exempt, and you have to provide insurance for people who work 30 hours a week. To most people, those are fairly simple concepts. Unfortunately, what is 50 when you start talking, well, is that 50 all year? Is that 50 seasonal? Is that full-time equivalent? And what's 30 hours? Is it 30 hours this week and 20 hours this week and 40 hours next week? Is that 30 hours? I mean, trying to figure out what is what, and then you have to consider the family income, where the employer knows the employee income, but not the family income. So there's a lot of
rules, isn't it?
There are a lot of rules, and they hadn't gotten them straight, and it didn't make that much difference, quite frankly, to the overall scheme of things.
Well, here's what is
and the only question was whether or not they would have to, if they did not provide insurance, whether they have to pay a couple of $1,000s per employee for not providing insurance, and so that's been delayed until we get all those little details straight. But like I said, for over at least 95% of America, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but what matters is Congress passed a law, and that law was Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act, and affixed to that was certain implementation dates. So how does the president just by executive fiat say, I'm just putting it off? Don't you have to then change the law? And we only have a half a minute.
When we pass a law, it's always subject to the rules. If the rules aren't in place, you can't implement it. But the law is going into effect. Young people up to 26 can stay on their parents' policies. If you get real sick and run up a big bill, the insurance company can't cut you off in the middle of your treatment. If you have a pre-existing condition starting in January, well, actually now you can get access to insurance, but starting in January, you will pay even with a pre-existing condition the standard rate, just like everybody else. Women won't be paying more than men. You get free prevention checkups and cancer screenings without copays and deductibles.
Well, I do have to say we're out of time.
Medicaid,
we're out of time, Congressman. I have to go. Do have to say that you've obviously read the bill. This is the John Fredericks Show. That was Congressman Bobby Scott. We're out of time. We got to go.